I want to share with you a DM situation that I had last week. And I have noticed over the past few weeks that this has started to reoccur for me more and more. So the DM I sent was good. Now, we all know that I love the DMs. I love a conversation. So it kind of jumped out at me when I was like, oh no, this is happening again. Now, the DM I sent, like I said, it was good. It was genuine. And I asked a real question and I listened to the answer. I explained my offer clearly. I was sharing more about the $97 Magnetic Conversations Telegram group. And the person replied back to me, "This sounds so amazing. I just need to focus on other things right now." And after that conversation, I have to admit, I was a little salty. I was a little irritated because that wasn't the first time that day that I had gotten that response. So I was like, what is wrong? Is Mercury in the microwave drinking Gatorade again? Or like, what is going on? So I sat with that. I closed my laptop. I went outside and just like got out of my office. And again, like I said, I've heard that before and quite often recently. So for a long time, because this isn't the first time this has happened, okay? Now, for a long time prior to this, I thought it meant that my offer was not right, or the price was wrong, or that the person just wasn't ready. And I've realized over the years that it doesn't mean any of that. So what it really means is that the conversation wasn't creating urgency. And if it's not creating urgency, there's no pressure, which means there's no real reason to say yes. So urgency in this sense is clarity. And the moment somebody goes from "that sounds interesting" to "I actually need this now" is a teachable skill. And that's what we're going to get into today. But before we get into that, this is what I help you do inside of Magnetic Conversations. So the link is down in the show notes. It's open right now, so you could come in and get some extra support. But we're going to kick off a live round on June 3rd, so at the beginning of the month. So make sure you're in now, because everything that I'm talking about today, if it's resonating, if you're like, oh my God, yeah, I need this, you're going to want to be in that Telegram group, because that's where I'm just showing up for the whole month of June. So if it doesn't light you up, it won't sell. And that is your sign to shift things in your business. Hi, I'm your host, Maggie Olson. I'm your business mentor, your human design expert, and the creator of the Magnetic Method Designed to Convert formula. I help women entrepreneurs just like you simplify their strategy, align their sales with their energy, and finally build a business that feels like freedom, not like pressure. After nearly 2 decades in entrepreneurship, I have learned that success isn't actually about doing more. It's about aligning with what already works for you, tapping into your natural energy. And here on the Chaos to Clarity podcast, we're going to blend human design with practical business strategy to help you attract clients naturally, sell with confidence, and grow with ease. So if you're ready to design a business that lights you up, converts with clarity, and learn more about working with me inside of the Magnetic Method mentorship and all of my other programs, you're going to find the link to all of that in the show notes, and you're going to find all of that information here on the podcast. So let's go ahead and dive into today's topic. Hello and welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie. I'm your host, your business mentor, and your human design expert. And if you're new here, this show is all about where we skip the theory and talk about actual moves, actual action steps you can take right now in your business. Now, before we get into the episode, in the very beginning of the episode, I was talking about a conversation not converting. Now, I just want to point out that not every single conversation is going to be a sale. And that's not what I'm promising you today in this episode. Some people just genuinely aren't your people, and you're going to have to be willing to send the message to figure that out. But what we are going to talk today about is if you're consistently hearing not right now, and you're talking to people, you're having conversations, people are saying, oh, this is so good, this is so needed, but oh, not right now. That's the gap we're talking about. So if you're in DMs daily and the conversations just kind of keep fizzling, and if you're a manifesting generator like me, you're starting to get mad, and then you're like, maybe I should just change my offer and my whole business and all the thing. It's not bad luck. It's a pattern. And what we're talking about here is a solution to the pattern. So let's get into this, because this is something that you will be able to fix, and you can shift quite quickly. So let's talk about the gap. Most people are thinking that when they're not converting conversations into clients, again, they think it's their offer. My price is too high, my niche is too broad, or quite the opposite, my niche is too narrow, right? My offer doesn't have enough stuff. Maybe I'll add some stuff. My content isn't good enough. The list could literally go on for days here, okay? So what happens is you'll go and fix those things. Now, I am here to tell you I have done all those things quite often, right? And some of it is that most of the time we are reacting in our business, right? We're reacting to what's happening. So the natural reaction is to go and fix it, to go and change it, right? To go and tweak the offer, to lower the price, to rebrand. And then they go back into conversations and the same thing starts happening. So if you're noticing this pattern happening, I want you to pause. Okay, the offer probably isn't the problem. However, a caveat to that, I will say, make sure you love your offer. Make sure there are some outcomes that people really actually want. Make sure that, make sure your offer is aligned. If you need help with that, again, we do that in the Magnetic Conversations Telegram group. I have a whole thread built out for connecting and answering questions about your offer. So let's get back into it. Today we're assuming that your offer is like on point. You're excited to talk about it. You can't wait to bring people in. You've built this thing. You're so excited. Okay. It's like palpable, the excitement. Now, if the offer isn't the problem then is the conversation sequence. So there's usually a specific moment in every sales conversation where the interest tips into action. Now, you could take this the conversation sequence, you could apply it to DMs, you can apply it to comments, you can apply it to sales calls, you can apply it to in-person networking, all the things, okay? So most people accidentally skip the step between interest tipping into action. And it's not because you're bad at sales, but really it's because no one ever taught you this. And for me personally, I had to learn this the hard way, or the school of life, quote unquote, way, which it's fine, right? When I was a budding entrepreneur in 2007, there were no courses, right? The internet was not what the internet is today in 2026, back when I started my business. So here's what I want you to think about. You probably learned to sell by watching other people sell to you, which is great, right? That's how we start to learn. Or you probably read a book about funnels, you took a course, whatever. Maybe somebody even told you, just be authentic. Now, whenever I say something like that, I always picture Genie, right, from Aladdin in my head, where Genie is in Aladdin's ear and just says, just be yourself, okay? But here's the thing. Yes, authenticity is great, okay? Reading books, taking courses, maybe even having a sales coach, right? That's all great. But no one tells you what to actually do inside of a conversation, message by message, to move someone from curious to committed. Or if they do, they say, follow my exact script. And if that script was not built with your energy in mind, it's not going to land the same way. Trust me. I've tried. I've tried to use sales scripts and they never hit the same way that they do for the creator. So something that you need to think about is that you need to understand what it's going to feel like for you. So let's think about this. You have a great offer. You have a great price. You have a warm audience. Now, if you're going to tell me I don't have a warm audience, again, this is where I want you to join the Magnetic Conversations $97 Telegram group, because if you're like, yeah, but I don't have a warm audience. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I promise, if you have followers on social media, you have a warm audience. Those are your warm audience members, okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about the gap, right? And it's not about being pushy. So if you're like, I am not going to be a used car salesman, girl, no, of course not. But we're not talking about manipulation or high pressure closing tactics here. It's about being really clear. And quite honestly, what is happening most of the time is it's not clear what you're selling, okay? And it's also about knowing what your job is at each stage of the conversation and what it's actually doing. So what this means, what does all of this mean? If you think about your client journey. Now, I know I've talked about client journey, but it's so important in terms of conversation, because your client journey is the foundation or the stair steps that people are going to take when they go from cold to sold. So you need to know, okay, I'm saying these things at these different stages, and this is where people are moving to. That's how you start to close the gap, is you start to understand, what is my client journey? What happens? What happens when somebody comments? What happens when somebody follows me? What happens when somebody is in my DMs? What happens when I ask them different things? So you can start to have these categories of things that you can say, which then that's where this becomes your own script, right? You're not using my script. I can tell you what I've said, what's worked for me, but that doesn't always mean it's going to work the same way for you. You have to take what you know and make it your own in order for it to close this gap. So if, when you do this, okay, you're going to wind up closing the gap in the not right now, and you're going to wind up making more sales. And this is where you start to really see, oh my gosh, I can actually do this. Okay. So what does a conversation that converts actually look like? Now, I teach a very simple framework. Again, this is all inside of the Magnetic Conversations Telegram group. The link is in the show notes. Make sure you go and sign up. You can join at any time. You'll be in there for about 45 days. And this is where you learn how to do this. You get to practice in real time. You get feedback in real time. So the simple framework is open, deepen, move. There's 3 jobs. Okay, every conversation has all 3, but most people are only really doing 1. Now, the first job in this framework is open. Okay, so this is starting a conversation, right? A DM, a reply to a comment, a response to a story. Most people are really good at this part. So if you see someone that's a good fit, you reach out, you ask a question, great. Okay, like that's the first job. You have to open the door in the conversation if you want to move forward. Now, I also want to pause here because I saw one of my friends who I follow on Instagram. She was talking about, and I've actually interviewed her before. Her name is Tinley. She's an OBM, and she had a reel that she was talking about, like, everybody like shits on the hustle culture, but I don't know any business that wasn't built on some sort of hustle and grit. And I agree with her. Now, I'm not saying go balls to the wall and work 24/7. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is you have to be willing to put in more than an hour a day into your business if you actually want to build it. Okay, especially if you're at a stage where your sales are up and down, where things are kind of all over, maybe where you are doing a lot of the work, you have to be willing to put in the hours in order to see the ROI. And upfront, it's a lot of hours. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of commitment to build a business. So if you're not willing to put in the time and effort to build a business, approach someone else. See if you can work inside their business. Okay? Now, more on that whole hustle culture topic later. I think that will probably be my next podcast because I do think it's important to understand when it's time to hustle and when it's not. Okay, so back to what we were talking about. Now, the first job here, right, in the framework of the magnetic conversation is to open. The second, this is usually what happens is you skip the second almost all the time. Okay, so this is something that I don't see many people teaching this, at least not outwardly. Maybe people are teaching this inside of their programs, but I've never been taught this. I learned this myself, right? So the part that nobody is teaching you is the deepening, right? Where you find out what someone actually needs, not what they said they want. So this is asking questions, not being afraid to ask the question. So here's the difference. If someone tells you their biggest challenge is getting clients, that's what they said they want help with. But if you take a second and ask one more question, like, what does that actually look like for you right now? Like, where do you feel like it's breaking down? They might tell you that they're actually in plenty of conversations, which I'm seeing this more and more and more in the conversations that I'm having. So this is like actual data that I've collected. Okay. I ask people before I ever give them the magnetic conversations. I, ask them if your biggest challenge is getting clients, what does that actually look like? Can you walk me through the process of how you generate clients? And they usually wind up saying, well, I'm having conversations, but they don't go anywhere. So they're not closing the conversation. They're not closing the sale. Or they might tell you they have no idea how to start a conversation at all. Or they might tell you that they had a great month 6 months ago and then it just stopped. They don't know why and they don't know how to repeat it. So those are 3 totally different problems. All things that I can help people with in conversations, right? In my coaching, in my mentoring, in my groups, all the things. But they need 3 different conversations. They need 3 different kind of angles to the conversation. This is also why it's so important to not have a plethora of offers. Okay? Because like for me, I know that my magnetic conversations is great for anyone who needs help with conversations, with generating leads and turning them into sales. I know that is what that's for. I know that I prefer to serve mostly women, right? Okay. So now what I was finding in my conversations is that I was actually skipping step 2, right? I was kind of asking the question of like, walk me through that, but then I would go right into the pitch. And for me, that was just not working. I needed to create a little bit more urgency in that conversation. So I wasn't deepening in. And that was why when I started realizing like, oh, all of these conversations I'm having are no's, and I was starting to get pissed off because everyone was a no, I was throwing myself a pity party and I was on the verge of changing my offer, right? When I said to my friend, one of my accountability partners, I said, talk me off a ledge. What am I not seeing? And this is really kind of what we uncovered was that, oh, if I stop and ask one more question, right? Based on those 3 different things that people had told me, if I ask a different question on one of those 3 things, the conversation went totally different. Okay. So when you skip deepening and you go straight to, oh, I have something that could be really valuable for you, you're essentially saying, I have the solution before you actually understand the problem that that person is having. And the person on the other end they're feeling that because it feels like a pitch, because it is a pitch. And I'm not saying that it's bad to pitch, right? It's not, because at some point in time, you're going to have to ask someone, would it be valuable for you to opt into this thing that I have? I can help you solve XYZ with this thing. Okay. But if you don't deepen the conversation, and deepening is really just 2 or 3 more questions, it literally takes 4 minutes. Okay. Like, especially if that person is online and answering you in the moment, right? And it can really just shift the whole conversation. Because now when you do make that offer, it's specific. And it's something, it would go something like, okay, based on what you told me, here's exactly what I think would help you. And it's not a pitch, right? So you're building the know, like, and trust with that person. You're also making them feel seen, heard, and understood. So it's a recommendation from someone who actually listened. So let's get into another example here. Now, I'm going to give you 2 versions of the same conversation. Now, this is something that I talked with a client the other day, and they were sharing this with me. I asked them for their permission to be able to share this here. So they said, someone said to me, their biggest challenge is bringing in clients. And they said back, I totally get that. I actually help coaches with exactly that thing. I have a 30-day program where we work on your client acquisition together, and it's just $97. Do you want to check it out? The person responded to them by saying, sounds great. I'll think about it. Now, this person, when they had this conversation, they screenshotted it, they sent it to me, and they were like, I can't handle another conversation like this. I can't handle it. Help me. Now, and I do want to say, this is something that inside of the Magnetic Conversations Telegram group, this is what we do. Okay. You get real-time feedback just like this. I took this out of that group. Okay. Now, the version that I had them go back, or I actually had them start a different conversation with a different person, but they had the same challenge. So they knew they had posted a post in a group, and there were a number of people who raised their hand and said, I am interested in that thing that you're offering. Okay, so the whole post was about generating clients, about getting clients. Now, the second person that they sent a message to, right, they also said, obviously, biggest challenge is getting clients. My client said, got it. Can I ask, when you think about where it breaks down, is it more that you're not finding enough people to talk to, or is it more that you're in conversations, but they're not going anywhere? And the person responded to them by saying, it feels more like the second one. I'm talking to people, but they always say they need to think about it. Okay. Now, my client said, okay, that's really specific and it's fixable. That's a conversation sequencing thing. It's like there's a specific moment that most people miss where interest tips into action. And that's what I work on. Would it be valuable for me to tell you more about how I do that? Now, it's a totally different response. It lands totally different. And the second one, my client converted her offer. She brought someone into her offer because she took the time to have a deeper conversation. Okay, which brings us to the third, right? The third job here. So we have three jobs in this framework, right? Open, deepen, move. Okay, so we're getting into the move part. This is usually what people call closing, and then they get super weird about it. But moving a conversation is not necessarily closing. Moving is just literally asking a clear question that creates the next step. So when my client asked her potential client, do you want me to tell you more about how I help people with that exact thing? It was moving the conversation to the next step, getting closer to a sale, right? And again, she asked a clearer question that created a next step, an opportunity for that person to be like, yes, I would love to hear more about that. Okay. Things like, do you want to check it out? Do you want me to send you the details? Does that sound like something you would want help with right now? Would it be valuable if? Okay. One clear question. That's it. You don't necessarily need a script. You don't need a closing technique. You literally just need to ask. Okay. And if you, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, I've talked about how when I started my photography business in 2007, I would go to the grocery store every single week. This was long before self-checkout. And I would stand in the checkout line and I would talk to the people in front and in back of me, right? And I would say, hi, how are you doing? I was doing this very thing in the grocery store lane in 2007, generating clients. And somehow, right, in the course of the conversation, not somehow, during this conversation, I would always ask, hey, hi, how are you doing? Are you doing anything fun this weekend? And inevitably, they would ask me the same thing. And I would say, oh, cool. Yeah, I took pictures for a family last weekend. We had so much fun. We were out at this park in the area. Or, oh, I'm looking forward to next weekend. I'm going to be photographing a wedding. It's going to be so much fun. I'm having the time of my life, right? And that would then spur them to think, oh, you're a photographer. And I would say, yeah, actually, I'd love to give you a business card. If you or anyone you know needs photos, I love the referral. Right. And it was literally me being willing to go and talk to those people and ask them, right? Ask them the clear question. Now, I will say, when I work with people, most people trail off, okay? They give all the information and then they stop and they wait and then they wonder why there's no response, or they wonder why, everybody says it sounds great. I'll think about it. Ask the question. Make the move. That's really what magnetic conversations is about. It's about being willing to ask the question, being willing to put in the work, being willing to make the move. Because if you're not willing to do that, then I think you need to rethink your business. Now, I just want to take a quick pause here. If you're listening to this thinking, I feel this in my soul, this is what is happening in my business, I also want you to know that some of this is not a you problem. Some of this might also be a system problem. Now, I, a couple years ago, switched from 4 paid subscriptions to one tool called Sattva.io. It's $99 a month. Everything in one place: leads, follow-up, conversations, pipeline, payments, everything. So if you're listening to this episode thinking, oh my God, how am I going to track all of this? I don't know if a Google spreadsheet can hold all of this. I don't know if I can quite possibly create one more thing in that Google Drive that's overflowing, full of stuff that I don't even know what's in there. Sattva is for you. Like I said, it houses everything from your website to your funnels, to your payments, to your pipelines. It will help you track your conversations. It will help you track your leads, understand where people are in your client journey, all for $99 a month. And because I loved it so much, I was offered a position to come on as the director of operations. So yes, I've used this platform for many years before I ever came on in a bigger capacity. So the benefit for you is if you need help setting it up, that's exactly what I do. So the link to sign up for Sattva is in the show notes. Go ahead and grab it. It's $99 a month. And then let's have a conversation about your business, about how you can set it up, how we can set it up together so that you can grow, so that you can get some time back in your schedule. So let's get back into the show. Okay, so we talked about, those 3 different stages. Let's talk about how to apply this to where you are right now. Okay, this is a little like self-diagnosis for you because I want to make this really practical and easy for you to see yourself inside of what we're talking about. So if your DMs are not converting the way you want to, or even just conversations in general, if you're not able to convert conversations, and I would say, it's like 1 or 2 out of 10 conversations are likely to be converting. Okay, I want you to do one thing after you finish listening to this episode. I want you to go and look at the last at least 5, if not 10 conversations that fizzled, right? The ones that no one responded back to you, the ones where there was an actual back and forth, and then it just died, right? The ones that ghosted you, where you were like, oh my God, a client, here they are, this is gold. And then like it fizzled out. I want you to go to those conversations because those conversations are going to give you more information than the ones that just never responded. So I want you to ask yourself, where did it stop? If the message stopped after your first message, right? So you sent a message and maybe you had a back and forth, like maybe 1 or 2 things, you've got an opening problem. Okay. Your opener isn't necessarily creating enough curiosity or connection to make someone want to respond. Now, a lot of times this is in with your content, right? Your content is kind of acting like your opener. So if no one is answering you within the first 1 or 2 messages, your opener isn't creating enough curiosity. Now, if the conversation stopped after they told you their challenge, you probably have a deepening problem. You move too fast, right? So if you asked a question, they answered, and then you pitched to them, and then they ghosted you, you need to get a little bit deeper. You pitched too fast before they felt understood. Remember, feeling seen, heard, and understood is super important, along with know, like, and trust. They might feel like they kind of know you, they kind of trust you, they kind of like you, but they're not really feeling that reciprocation of feeling valued back. Now, if things stopped after you pitched, you might have a moving problem. You didn't ask a clear next step question. Or you asked, but the offer didn't feel specific enough to the situation that person is dealing with. And that might be because you skipped deepening. Now, most people, when they look at this, and this is something that I have you do inside of Magnetic Conversations, I have you look at, am I actually doing these things? Or am I just saying I'm doing them? Because that's 2 very different things, okay? We were never really taught to slow down in the middle of a conversation, okay? We were taught to get to the point. And in sales conversations, getting to the point too fast is exactly what kills your conversation. So if you're wanting a bigger, better closing rate, you have to be willing to have the conversation. You have to, whether that's email, DM, Zoom, it doesn't matter, in person, you have to be willing to ask deeper questions to get curious, because curiosity can create clarity. So again, this framework, the open, deepen, move, is what we work on inside of Magnetic Conversations. And it's every day. I've actually expanded it from 30 days to 45 days because we spend 2 weeks generating leads. We spend 2 weeks working on bringing people onto calls, and then we spend 2 weeks working on closing sales. Now, that could all happen all at once, but there's specific things to help you move people along so that the goal by the end of those 45 days, the end of that support, you are at least making one sale. Okay. And the thing is, I'm here in the Telegram group with you. I'm not just dropping content and disappearing. Inside of the Magnetic Conversations group, I'm in there every single day sharing my real-time data, but I'm also having conversations with you inside of there. So if you're like, okay, this sounds like something I need, it's $97. Again, it's 45 days, and really it'll be longer if you jump in right now. If you jump in before June 3rd, you're going to get that extra support because I'm in there every day with you as we're moving through this. So the link is down in the show notes. Make sure you go ahead and sign up. If you have questions, please drop me a DM, right? Slide into my DMs and, let me know where or what you're not understanding here. Now, if you're nodding along in this conversation, in this episode, if you recognized yourself somewhere in here, right, that is literally a sign to come in and join Magnetic Conversations. Now, it's not going to stay $97 for all time. I am leaving that price available probably until the end of June. And then we'll start a new cohort in August. So you can join right now. Again, we start the live version on June 3rd. Where, every version, I guess, is live, but this one is a little more intentionally live. I'm doing a lot more, just a lot more with this specific cohort. So Magnetic Conversations was a course, and now I've moved it into a Telegram group to give you more support in there. So if you want to go deeper, if you want to sit down with me one-on-one, bring your actual conversations, your actual offer, your actual numbers, and have me tell you exactly where your business is leaking. I also have strategy calls open, and right now they're $297. These will be going up to $497 at the end of the summer. So the link for that is also in the show notes. But I will say, if you're like, I don't know, I want you to come and join Magnetic Conversations, because that, honestly, you're going to get I've packed so much in there in a way that doesn't feel like a fire hose, right? In a way where it's like, okay, here are my action items for today. More importantly, inside of Magnetic Conversations, I teach you the 20-minute framework for not living online, right? Now, next week on the Chaos to Clarity podcast, we are going to talk all about hustle and why hustle isn't always bad, but how to balance hustle and not hustle. Basically just how to balance your time so that you feel really supported in your business, where you're putting in the work, you're moving the needle forward. You're not going to want to miss that. So I'm so excited that you've been here for this episode. Like always, make sure you follow, subscribe, share with a friend. If something resonated with you, please slide into my DMs. Come and find me on Instagram at the Chaos to Clarity podcast and let me know what landed. You can also find me on Instagram at Maggie Lynn, Lynn, mentoring. You can also find me on Facebook at Maggie Lynn Wilson, and I will see you in the next episode.